I heard you mention two names, McChrystal, dirty as the day is long, and I heard you mention the name Michael Flynn. Are those the two men, or did I miss the second name?
Those are the two men that are working together in their
General
business, their
Michael Flynn?
consultation business. Yes,
General
sir.
Michael Flynn.
Yes, sir.
You're saying General Michael Flynn is dirty?
Bro,
No, I know. Look, I need to
some
do a
people's
follow-up
idols are
call.
going to die tonight. If people would take the time to learn business associations and who these people actually are affiliated with, they would find out that there is a lot of controlled opposition that is yoked in covenant and sexual union to the very people that they're masquerading, that they're fighting behind the scenes. A lot of these people are in the belly of the beast, and they're fighting and weaponizing the resistance force only to control it to its demise. You have to know them by their fruits, you guys. You have to be so careful to carefully examine each and every one of these people and who it is that they do their dirty deeds with to understand that some of them are incredibly in bed with the worst kinds of people.
This is wargaming.
Yeah.
How critical in politics, in business, in war, wargaming is so much
It's
of
everything. It's everything. You know, I mean, the whole idea about planning, you know, you got to plan, and then once the first shot is fired, you know, all plans go to hell. But as long as you have thought through these things.
You looked at all the angles.
Exactly. So you know, a little, 30 seconds on my background. My background is a person who primarily in the intelligence world, where I always had to put my feet into the boots of our enemy and think like them. So that means I had to study their doctrine, I had to study their formations, I had to study their strengths, their weaknesses, all these different things. Because when I came in front of our commanders, and in front of the commanders that I worked for over the years, you know, they were going to ask me, well, what is the enemy thinking? What is the enemy going to do? What are they going to do? Because we have to plan our strategy around it, right? So I always tell people, if I can think it, they can think it. And they have people on their team that are smart, shrewd, savvy, they're strategic, and they are evil.
What's up, everybody? It's Booma, the digital samurai for truth. Gonna try to talk fast in this one, go hard. Another painfully beautiful production. This is Digital Samurai News. General Stanley McChrystal and General Michael Flynn, controlled opposition exposed by Nathan Reynolds and Gray Area Monarch. Know them by their fruits. I don't care if General Flynn tickles your ears with all the things you want to hear, if he pulls you into the psyop of trying to get you to believe that he is fighting the good fight against evil. Satanism inverts everything. Flip it upside down. We're going to see all kinds of material in this one, so I want to get right to it. Nathan Reynolds has been really hitting it hard. Gray Area Monarch, I've covered Gray before. He's the man, and I'm going to bring him back into this. We're not messing around. It's like, what general have you ever seen coming from the military is like jumping out in front of so many, whether it's media, getting involved with certain personalities, especially here in this truther community. Heck, it might really go back to Aquino, since we've seen someone be so publicly out there, coming from the military and pushing such an agenda. We just watched a video where Sabrina Wallace is ripping his ass. It's like, why do all roads lead to Flynn? Reawaken tours, connected to Charlie Ward. We've seen him intermingling with all these different people. He has his own little way where he hijacked the Q movement, put on his digital soldiers. Now he's separated himself from that. He's also separated himself from the Trump CIC conversation, even though, as I've covered on this channel, he is in every single one of these pockets. He's connected to all these players. He has control of the entire game board. Now I think it goes beyond Flynn, and we're going to get into that. What's above Flynn? Who else is using Flynn as a puppet? Well, we got into McChrystal a little bit here, but we're going to get into more material. Where this is where people have to pay attention, because it doesn't matter what they say. You will know them by their fruits. Please realize that I put all the links down below these videos, so you'll have more access to certain content. Some moves a little bit quickly on the screen. I get that, so I might have to pause. These Rumble commercials being put into the videos now is kind of driving me nuts, but it is what it is. But some of these guys, like Nathan and Gray, they are not playing around anymore. Gray comes in more recently and says how many cowards that support at General Flynn can't even ask him fair questions about valid concerns? All of them. I wonder why. Not. You are all pathetic and deserve what you get when this all plays out. It's getting close too. Some of you will cry and try to weasel out of responsibility and accountability. maybe most. Some won't even have the chance. Make arrangements, you pieces of dog shit. These guys have seen enough. They've been involved in some of these projects. They know what's happening that most of us have no clue about, but we're going to get a taste of it right now from Nathan Reynolds. I've been putting these pieces together. I've got links down below. Pause if you need to read something that's on the screen, but a lot of this is going to be covered in depth so that it gets absorbed, so that you understand what's at play behind some of these guys like Flynn and McChrystal. But let's hear from Nathan, some of his personal experience and the hardships that he's gone through, the things that he's witnessed, and what happened to bring them to today.
I grew up in the desert, and a lot of it's the worst stuff. And we're literally like a few days away from the solstice, those of you guys that are watching this now or later. And it's a hard season for me, man. I watched a lot of people die horrifically in this season throughout my life. And I also had very wonderful, victorious moments at this time of year. But it's really hard to articulate that to your little 4-year-old when she's like trying to pick up chicken eggs and she's cracking eggs and you're just trying to be a dad. But like, it's still there. It's not like my mind doesn't lose much. It's all there, you know? And it's just, there's a lot of guys sitting here trying to figure out how to navigate fatherhood with that burden on their shoulders. There's a lot of people who killed their battle buddy in combat on purpose because he was screaming bloody murder and lost his mind and was going to give away their position, and they had to kill him. There's a lot of guys that do a lot of horrific things, a lot of gals that do a lot of horrific things that they never talk about again, and it ruins their lives. And I am 100% convinced that freedom comes through the power of confession. And it doesn't have to be to a priest guy, creepy manipulator in an office somewhere. The power of confession is the source of deliverance. I'm 100% certain of it. That is what has set me free. And so that's why I have set my mind to tell these things that have been so costly for so many, for so long. And you know what? I believe the Father can protect me however he sees fit. I am at his disposal. And I trust he's a good father. And you know what? That's why I talk about this stuff, because there's a lot of guys who get recruited into these projects and they think they're going into a secret scientific group. And that sounds great. They're like, I finally get to do the research that I want to do, and I finally have the tools to do it. And then they develop something that is 100% evil, and they have no say in the matter. And I just wanted, like you and I were talking earlier, I wanted autonomy. At the end of the day, I didn't know what it was I was really looking for throughout all of my life, but I was looking for freedom. I was on a quest for freedom. I thought vengeance was the gates of freedom. And I learned, or the key to unlock the gates of freedom. But I learned that vengeance was a tool that can be manipulated by the guys who are your prison boss, right? Just as easily as it can by the guy who's trying to save the world. And when I got into Fort Lee, Virginia, which is where my advanced training took place, I had a family member as my drill sergeant. Okay, and this is a Reynolds family, and he's an East Coast Empire guy. And that's when I finally got the opportunity to join up with the Lobos and this team that had happened earlier on, who had shown me this cool way of doing bag and tag 'em. And I finally got this opportunity to join this team. And these are guys, I was not a Delta Force operator. I was not on paper anywhere a Special Forces guy. I was a nobody nomad in the Army, and I bounced around from unit to unit, and that was the cover that you use, because you don't want to put it on your resume, spy.
Yeah.
But you need to know that about 8 out of every 10 military units in our United States military is infested with spies. So if you know that, you better figure out a way to build your own spy army to deal with that. And that's why the Jason projects on that side of it existed, because that's the scientific realm of a lot of corporate espionage. And then you have all these guys that you need, which are field assets, which are the guys that are the door kickers. And so they bridge that gap out there in Virginia. And I started doing wet work for the United States military.
What does that mean, wet work?
Strategic eliminations, killing people. Killing people, and like we talked about earlier, some of that is accidental deaths, looking like accidental deaths, just overdosing with too much potassium so it looks like a heart attack. You know, something that's not generally detectable. You're injecting people between their toes and smothering their faces, you know. There's a lot of that. Then there's a lot of stuff that just involves good old-fashioned blade work, and that's all that was my thing. I didn't care to kill people from far away. I wanted to be on them,
You know, I understood the intimacy of killing is 100% an intimate act. And when you take a life, there's nothing, the act of having relations with your wife is an act where it can create life. And taking a life is just as intimate. And you get to know people very authentically in their final moments of life. And you can find out all kinds of things about people. And that's what I started doing a lot of, very full time, all at once when I got out to Fort Lee, Virginia. And that involved a lot of the areas in Norfolk and Washington, D.C. and the Beltway. And some of that stuff popped up on papers, you know, and that's when things got real scary, real fast, because I started realizing that a lot of these things, I think I'm going after a guy who abuses children, doing a ring roundup. And you go into a house, man, that has children on parade. And you're there in a suit and tie, and you've got to look the part and act the part. And you've got these bleed throughs of what's the past and what's the present. And now I'm the guy with the gun. And now I get to have some fun, you know, but you're not allowed to. And this is the perversion inside the United States military, is that what you don't know is that you're coming in there to take out somebody, and you're in a house full of these perverts, like,
but they're not
full of them. And you have to masquerade like one of them, and you're not allowed to touch any of them. And you're looking at commanders of field battalions. You're looking at politicians who you can identify on the television. You're looking at people that are readily recognized public figures, and you're not allowed to touch any of them. And this is that broke me. This one mission going after this guy called Mr. Blue, and I've shared this before publicly, so whatever. But like that estate, infiltrating that estate and getting into that building and seeing the people in this house who have built a room, concrete, the entire room, floor to ceiling, floor to stadium seating and drain panels. And to see millions of dollars of infrastructure put in for this, that was new to me. I'd seen a lot of home economics versions of this stuff. I had never seen it scaled up to someone's like massive estate style version of it. And then seeing people that have all the ability to shut this stuff down, they're there. And that just ruined me, because I'm going in to do this extraction on a guy. I have to bring him out alive. And he is, can I say it now? Like, can I be more authentic on this one? He is skinning a boy alive with a bone grafting tool when I found him. And then I have to get that guy out. So I have to give him a certain type of drug, which is derived from a certain tree in Brazil that makes somebody do anything you want. And he walks out of there as my best friend, and I drive his car out. And then I take him back to a house where we do all the dirty to get out our information that we want to. I turn him over to a guy that does that for a living, who has his big why, because somebody did that to his children when he was young. Game on. And so that's all he does. He just interrogates people. That's what we say. Tortures them. Tortures that man to death. That was my job at 18 years old. That's what I was doing, my summer vacation. And then I'm supposed to go out to this normal world. And you see these people, like I see their faces, and then I see them being aggrandized as the heroes of the world. These are our rulers. These are the best people that are in charge of the counter child trafficking networks. And I'm like, these are the perverts of justice, man. And it tweaked me bad, because once I'll dig, and I'm going to dig until I find the answers. I have an insatiable need to know, and I'm going to find out the absolute root of a man. I will find out the deepest, darkest secrets of every person I ever interact with. And I am 100% certain whether or not that person is who they say they are, or if there's something else there. And once I find that out, and if you are inconsistent with what you portray to the masses and who you are at the heart of yourself, I'm going to find it out, man, because that's duplicity, and that's hypocrisy, and that's the leaven of the Pharisees that is destructive to all nation states. That's exactly the tactics that have destroyed empires forever, is subterfuge from the inside. And that's what we got inside this house of cards, is a nest full of these disgusting serpent eaters. And you know what? I couldn't stand it. And I hated it so bad, man. And I started disobeying. And as soon as you get an asset out of containment, I was at Fort Bragg briefly for a rendezvous. I was driven from Fort Lee, Virginia down there. They have these cheap taxis that they drove me down there. And I saw some of these generals who were in charge of these special operations projects, and I was disrespectful to one of them. And that was it. They pulled me off the projects. He nuked me off the team so fast. General McChrystal. He was in charge of Special Operations Command at the time. I had no idea who he was. He was in a suit. I didn't know who the heck this guy was. I was watching the little festival of guys fighting each other in the pit. This is how they do like X-Class. They want to test out a weapon system. They want to test it out between two guys and make them fight to the death. And then they try to prove which one's better, you know? And I've been doing that since I was a child. These sycophantic, like this is a pit fight. These guys are like the most powerful people in the world. And you're going to do this kind of crap? Like what a wasted life, you know? I utterly loathe it. And I was so enraged after the fact, and I disrespected him and I shrugged him off and I basically snarled at him. And they're like, you're done. You're never on the teams again. You're never going to touch any of this. They washed me out of the military so fast, made my head spin, bro. Because as soon as you show a guy like this is not controllable, you either kill them instantly or you get the heck away from them as fast as you can. And that's what happened, man. They washed me out so hard, so fast, man, and tried to eradicate me out of that industry.
Wow. Stuff's intense, man. You just heard more from Nathan there, talking about his story leading up to that horrific encounter with McChrystal. He's talking about 8 out of 10 military units infiltrated by spies, giving you the in-depth look of how this corruption is so prolific. When I'm talking about Flynn having his hand on all this game board, I'm talking mostly about the media, because it's been said, control the media, control the mind. Where the head goes, the body follows. There's a lot of people that believe that Trump has all the cards, that he's going to take out Flynn and all this is going to be no big deal. But you're seeing there that Flynn's pretty confident. Maybe it's that pride before the fall. But at the same time, these guys really seem to have a very vast control of the game board with the podcasters. They're all grifting off of us, controlling our attention spans and our mind, our time and our money. They've got an upper hand until we break free from this. More people become aware of the McChrystals and the Flynns and the operations that are for your mind war, the psyops that are being played out. Because if they control our mind, we can't break free of this matrix. Hold on to what you believe as far as Trump and the good guys and all this stuff. Because in this next segment with Nathan, he does bring up, as he goes into the clandestine groups, and you can catch more of the episode in links down below, about how they operate here on American soil and across the world, and the ways that they've gained blackmail over American soldiers. But a really great thing is that he talks about a group wanting to break free from that and push back on the hierarchy. Check this out.
Well, during the advancement after 9/11 and during the war in Iraq, the United States military, under that kind of covert arm of Title 50-2, began to procure this Scorpion project, and they began to recruit dissidents, right? Terrorists to join this, criminals out of criminal organizations to join the Scorpion Brigade. And these were the title of this was called DB Anabasis. This is something you can look up for yourself. By that, it used to be deep classified, deep black, but I'm not revealing anything that's now not publicly readily findable information. But DB Anabasis was governed by John McGuire and Louis Guardia. And they began to train these individuals at Area 51, like the actual place, Area 51, not some kind of ethereal, place, like a real place where they do covert operations. They began to train them to be these state assets so that when they shipped them back to be Splinter Cell assassin special kill teams over in Iraq, they would follow orders. The big problem within these organizations is that most of these people were into male rape. Super critical piece that most Americans are not aware of about Middle Eastern culture is the amount of pedophilia and male-on-male rape that takes place in that. And anybody who spent any time over there who got to see that understands that it was completely concealed from the massive population, the amount of pedophilia and the amount of boy-on-boy man love and man rape that took place under the IDF, like the actual security alliance that the United States military put forth in Afghanistan and also in Iraq, that we had such a hard time keeping our soldiers that we were, in search, guys that were like local on the ground assets, from raping each other and being high on opium all the time. And it led to constant problems and strain. And yet that was buried and obfuscated until 2018, when finally the United States military admitted, yeah, we had tons of cover up of a lot of child pedophilia and a lot of child pornography production that was going on overseas, because that same material was being used to blackmail and control the United States soldiers, special operations soldiers, and people that were ground assets for these paramilitary organizations. They got compromised, many of them, because they witnessed these things or they began to kill pedophiles. And then they were getting in trouble. And so this led to a long series of a chain of events where individuals inside the military began an insurrection, a quiet insurrection at that, to try to overthrow and eliminate the hierarchy that was facilitating these child trafficking rings and organizations. One of the key teams in that was Team Orange and the Lobos team. This is United States Army talk specifically about Team Orange. The United States Army had a few teams of assets that were trying to resist this and try to go on strike missions to kill, execute. We had different phrases like find, fix, and finish. There's lots of different nomenclatures for how you can take direct actions. Others terms are things like wet works, right? Being judge, jury, and executioner, so that you could be a singleton killer out there and operate outside of the normal governing binds to commit what's called democide, killing of state citizens. And that's where I got brought in 2007 into Fort Lee, Virginia, as the place where a lot of this brigade command and control was being coordinated out of. That was where I had these interactions like we talked about previously on being given mission directives to infiltrate pedophilia gangs and child sex trafficking rings that were centered predominantly in Alexandria, Virginia. Those interactions of what I had out there is what got me connected to General Stanley McChrystal, General Michael Flynn, as he later became the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, people who have more than enough substantive evidence on actual horrific child human exploitation rings and campaigns that are holding that information in and refusing to disclose that to the public for reasons of personal and national security, because it would black eye so many of the powerful rulers of our society. And I'm not just talking about politicians and judges and magistrates and military leaders, but I'm also talking about the very people in the corporate clientele list, the people that are running and ruling much of the financial donor and lobbying campaigns. Those black books are held by individuals like that and are used as blackmail and coercion and control in order to keep the truth from ever coming out. But the most dangerous thing in the world, is what I have learned, is men of integrity who speak the truth regardless of the consequences, who are willing to set aside secrecy clauses for the sake of bringing forth the truth and guarding the sheep from what is absolutely treasonous traitors and chameleons masquerading as heroes in our midst.
We got chameleons and treasonous traitors masquerading as heroes to keep the truth from ever coming out. Like you see on the screen here, I've been covering at length on this channel. Blackmail is the currency. And we're hearing from Nathan, and we're about to hear from Gray, about how guys like General Michael Flynn know way more than they'll ever let on. And then think about the Flynn network, the podcasting network, control the media, control the mind. The integration that they've made into the alternative media in order to know exactly what we're thinking. So you talk about wargaming, like he was talking about with Alex Jones earlier on in this episode. They know exactly how we think. They'll say the exact things that we want to hear. So they capitalize on every disaster or breaking news story. Talking about the hurricane here. General Flynn coming in. If you're a believer, now is the time to pray. There are biblical levels of events occurring worldwide. And we're going to find from Mr. Seven Rays that he doesn't align with a lot of our biblical views. But then Vandersteel taking the opportunity to come in and say things like, I'm committed to helping all souls discarded by their federal government. We need the world's general to lead. This is coming from somebody that was literally in the Capitol on January 6th. Many people were that are connected to Michael Flynn, and putting the idea of the world's general into people's minds. These people influence tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands to millions when it reaches out to the whole network. And it's a case of if you lead, they will follow. They're ready to take direction and execute. Napalm, the militia, J6 on a nationwide scale. Think about these things. And earlier on, I showed P. Diddy on the screen. Because I'm telling you, they'll act like they want to fight the same things that we want justice for. Maxwell, Epstein, Diddy, the blackmail pedophile rings, when they know darn well what's really going on in this world. You're talking about American soldiers being caught up in this blackmail to hold power over them by these kinds of corrupt generals. These are the things that we need to be aware of, because they know way more than they'll ever lead on to. But if they can pretend to be our heroes, they can cap the truth, gatekeep it, and stop us from ever finding what would really change humanity. It would cause a lot of chaos, but that would be the transition worth making for doing the right thing and being people of integrity, like Nathan is talking about. People willing to speak the truth regardless of the consequences. So now I'm going to let Nathan introduce Gray, where he tells his story about how he intersected with this man along his painfully beautiful journey.
That's in outside of Fort Campbell, near the border of Tennessee and Kentucky. That's called Hunter's Field. And it was a air base, but in a field. So not towered, not known. And it's where special operations groups would be able to go in and out of to do different training exercises. And one of these field assets, a guy kind of like me, different background and story, but like me, lived there with dogs that were not dogs, wolves, like actual wolves, like not the dogmen, kind of just wolves. And they would run operations. And when I was in basic combat training, got taken from Fort Knox, Kentucky, out to this middle of nowhere cornfield in near the Fort Campbell area, and it was Hunter's Field. And they would have a maze, a gauntlet that they would set up to do simulated training experiences, but they would release the wolves into it while you're running in this what you think is like another training house, kill house kind of scenario, and you got to rescue a hostage, or you got to take somebody out, or you got to extract somebody, and then there's suddenly stinking wolves in there.
Woo-wee! Yeah, some stinking wolves in there. And when you hear Nathan talking about guys in the military willing to push back against the hierarchy, and people with integrity willing to speak the truth regardless of consequences, here we are. Both Nathan and Gray here doing that very thing. And Gray coming in and saying, do y'all know what's coming? Nathan's firing things up, isn't he? Wink, wink. So number one, I'll have this on the screen as well, but Nathan Reynolds, a.k.a. Joshua Killo, on Hunter's Field, Gray Wolf in 2007. 2 is Gene Dio's Chip Tatum, confirming Hunter's Field in 2014. Elaborated here, so I'll have these links down below for you guys to have more access to them. I'm focused more on Stanley McChrystal and Flynn for this one, but look into his background for yourself, so you can check out this Gene Dio's Chip Tatum we'll have on the screen there. Number 3 is Gray Wolf at Ed Hunter Field, Ring Farm in 2007. Number 4, Gray Wolf mugshot in 2008 after waging war against the corrupt conglomerate of cowards. I only show who's already in the public. I only discuss locations that have been compromised and that were involved with corruption. I'm reasonably sensible and responsible, despite what the perpetrators are dying for you to believe. And he's kind of got a little sense of humor. Once you get into Gray, you'll appreciate his sense of humor. Do you know how many men are ready to come forward pending a conducive environment? And I think that's what it's all about. More of us getting on the same wavelength of allowing for an environment where whistleblowers can come forward, people that have probably been involved in some really tough stuff. I mean, you heard some of Nathan's story where he was literally an assassin, Gray being involved in a lot of these projects. We've got to create an environment that is welcoming to at least hear people out if they want to do the right thing. So I worked adjacent to McChrystal and Flynn, running highly compartmentalized domestic kill teams / hit squads, training with DIA, JSOC, etc., and dealt with a lot of misuse of special forces / mission units for personal favors, corrupt agendas, controlling human / drug / weapon trafficking rings, etc. The very things that we are trying to fight in this movement, or say we're fighting in this movement. Don't listen to these talking heads that are making tons of money while all this is still going on. I'm telling you, it's up to we the people. A lot of this is woven into classified programs that either do a bare minimum and or conduct mini psyops with terrorist / pedo snuff type scenario videos, etc. to convince the limited oversight to sign off if they themselves weren't complicit. The lines get blurry. It's the good old boys club having their way at the end of the day. And guys like Flynn, they're fighting for a cause. There's probably factions at war right now. They probably think they're doing the good fight. But when we match it up to what is good for humanity and we the people, I think you'll find that those things do not align. McChrystal especially is scum, and Flynn is not who people think he is at all. At all. This goes far beyond my direct experience to many associates experience much more recently. Understand that due to the highly compartmentalized sensitive issues they were involved with, they had/have to be the ones to steer certain online information / misinformation / disinformation, etc. Only the ones in the loop know the exact parameters that need to be navigated. Flynn is running a net campaign, PR in the front and business as usual out of the back. It looks like the men who have made the real sacrifices are going to have to step up yet again. At General Flynn, you will be held accountable publicly. Some of the guys from the teams have had enough, to say the least. Buckle up. And so that's what introduced us into Gray here, and I've been sharing these on the screen as Gray was talking. I want to get into what he's replying to here by Jessica Rojas. American woman, mother, and critical thinker, conspiracy realist, libertarian, less government, more freedom, was sharing that came from some of the material that we've already been sharing that concerns Nathan's breakdown of what's going on here on the SGT report. Former operative for the deep state shares some disturbing details. A must listen. Let's check it out.
For those of you that just want to understand, there was an operation that I had to do under General Stanley McChrystal's orders. He was the commander for the Joint Special Operations Command in Fort Bragg, North Carolina at the time. He was the head of special operations, SOF units, including Delta operatives and including what are called other government organizations. They started working hand in hand in order to try to advance him into a into the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Secretary of State. He was hobnobbing and brown-nosing his way into that industry. Along the way to do that was eliminating political dissidents of state assets here in the United States. He was killing people off through his hitmen. Okay,
is there a Michael Hastings connection here?
We're going to get into something.
The Rolling Stone whistleblower, the Rolling Stone reporter.
We're going to go real deep into that if you would like, because there's some people and change agents that I was a part of and did operations for, specifically under the direction of McChrystal, operating out of Alexandria, Virginia at the time, a place where he later in 2014 set up a private LLC. This is after he fast-tracked. I've got to go back. Sorry. I got to back you up in the timeline here for a second, because we got to talk about the private consultation groups of what General McChrystal founded and what Michael Flynn and some of the other operatives that passed a lot of the disinformation financing campaign to silence truthers, to infiltrate truthing communities, to create and finance all the bots behind the scenes and weaponize the NSA, that all of these different agencies to go after and censor people that were bringing forth the truth, to censor whistleblowers. This all had its origins back when I was in the United States Army in 2007. I went on an operation given to me by General McChrystal to go in to agents in the judicial community of the United States who were doing sting operations on whistleblowers. These FBI agents were dirty, very dirty. And they were planting child pornography on hard drives of whistleblowers so they could discredit them and throw them into prison. That's what they were doing under the orders and under the command of the head of the FBI. Covertly, abstractly, through a cutout. Okay, this is somebody who doesn't know the job, who doesn't know A and doesn't know B, but is just a cutout who passes on orders. These FBI agents.
I just want to back you up.
Absolutely.
Cheryl Atkinson has blown the whistle on this and testified that this is the case, that she was basically threatened. If she didn't shut up, they're going to find child porn on her husband's computer.
It's exactly how it works. This is exactly how they eliminate people. This is character assassination. Please understand, this is all in the lieu of psychological operations. That's based, the head of psychological operations is at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They've changed their name, of course, because they're always masquerading. But listen, that head of psychological operations are the people who have the propaganda presses to put out materials like this and tell you guys, underworld operators, how to dismantle countries from within. These are the people that were willing to bend over physically and literally do anything to anybody in order to climb their way to the top. They do all the dirty trickster stuff. This is how they deal with dissidents. And they would do it for people like the area of the network that I was investigating at the time was going on in Maryland at Indian Head. There's a naval experimental. It's one of the biggest naval operations stations in the entire country. Most important critical infrastructure that helps to develop secret weapons predominantly. There's a lot of spies coming in and out of that. Well, one of those people was somebody who had discovered a weapon system that was being deployed against the American populace. This specific weapon system that was being deployed was physically designed to engineer retroviruses to kill genetic markers of people and to protect those that didn't have those genetic markers. They had taken that information and smuggled it out and were trying to work with a journalist to bring it forward. The way that the FBI, when they found out about this, they sucked their dirty tricksters onto them and were putting child porn onto them. The reason they popped up onto my radar was because I was at a meeting covertly where the child pornography was being paid for and purchased. I was there plain clothes, posing as a very different buyer of that in order to ascertain evidence for it. When that deal went down, then those guys got marked in my world for strategic eliminations, for killing. However, I was ordered, instead of killing them, to follow them and to tail them and to figure out who the customer really was and see if I could run up the ring another ring or two, run it up a little bit higher. What it led me to, however, was them planting that on a whistleblower's hard drive. That's when the whole entire case shifted for me, and General McChrystal ordered a stand-down order so that that evidence could get planted on that whistleblower's hard drive first. Then I was supposed to eliminate the buyers. That's where it gets really disgusting and messy, because rather than killing the whistleblower, rather than killing the journalists, they're weaponizing these information agents to do that stuff for you. Okay. My side of it was to eliminate the perverts of justice all along the way. Because when I start to see that, I start to connect the dots and see what's actually going on here. And this is the stuff that absolutely destroyed and ruined my faith in the United States military at the time. Because the people that were in the position of power most effectively to stop it were facilitating all the evil. And they got promoted. He got promoted. General Stanley McChrystal got fast-tracked to the White House. He got fast-tracked to the United Nations. He's a Council on Foreign Relations member. He's in with the big club in his own way. And because of that, when he got out of the military and everyone bowed down to him and gave him reverence and cheered him on for the hero that he wasn't, that man started a LLC, a consulting group that operated out of Alexandria, Virginia, the very brick and mortar physical house that myself and other secret clandestine operatives would go to get special kill team assignments for, to go and do these froms. This is all in the public, and you can see this in the public record. He purchased that house and began to operate special kill teams, wet workers, and as a corporate for hire. Instead of having to be associated with the military, he has a long black book of people he can call who will do these for whoever has the money, whoever has the political clout. He still operates that to this day. They've since closed down that facility because what they operated from there was manipulating lobbyists, manipulating politicians, blackmailing child exploitation rings. They coordinated that from there to pass the very legislation that has turned all of us off, that's silenced us, that's taken away our financial records, that's eliminated and destroyed us. That's those two men operated from there and launched intelligence operations in the forms of all kinds of truth or conspiracies, some that are obviously not true, some that are full of rotten, some that have some truth, and others that are controlling the opposition. They are well implanted in the opposition to control the narrative and silence those that are actually authentic within there. Those are some of the power breakers. That was some of my interactions with them. And I could and would testify about this in elaborate and details, however it sees fit, to anyone that actually has the willingness to see justice brought to the surface.
There is so much within that piece. There's so much in all of these that I'm sharing with you, but in that one alone, you hear about the technology and the genetic targeting. That might tie into something like the Sabrina Wallace is warning people about. But the gatekeeping of the truth, the controlled opposition to be your heroes that are just basically masquerading when they're really traitorous, treasonous bastards. This is coming from people that have direct experience in this. So when you're talking about all of these podcasters and stuff connected into the Reawaken tours and that are basically handled by people like Flynn because they get the connection to his network, the praise and podcast shows that they can do with people like Vandersteel, Pete Santilli, and the people that we saw earlier that were on Napalm, connected into guys like Stu Peters, and all these people that can blow up your platform and make you the money. Money is the root of all evil. It really is. But that stuff that Nathan just laid out there is some of the biggest in this whole production that I'm doing here today. So please make sure you go back and check stuff out. But let's hear a little bit more from Gray here. Listen to Nathan for the lead-in. Now understand that the known corrupt former OSS, John Jack K. Singlob, was named by Gene Dios Chip Tatum in his infamous Boss Hog whistleblowing list amidst Iran-Contra scandals. Singlob was a founder of the CIA and of America's Future, which was handed off to corrupted/compromised Flynn, who still has deep ties to McChrystal, despite public appearances. The ties run deep, beyond the Irish mafia, beyond family, beyond the vested consulting interests, beyond monetary matters. Who are they working their way up to? Who are they trying to please? And like Nathan was saying, they're willing to do anything to move up the ladder. That's what we're about ready to get into. So sure, Flynn and McChrystal publicly parted ways and further covered the tracks on paperwork as well. But the ties and interests are aligned, and the actions/fruits reveal the true story, regardless of any pushed narrative or scoffs at questioning to Flynn. What are those deep ties? Fact is that Flynn was brought up, trained/conditioned, installed. ABD is still controlled/commanded through McChrystal and even his masters through Sovereign Military Order of Malta, SMOM, as well as other various globalist order agendas, which again were fast-tracked into the USA, especially through the OSS and paperclip generational crowd who brought up McChrystal and Flynn both. Now don't get us started on the fact and loose Flynn played with Pizzagate and QAnon. Pizzagate, Liz Crokin being tied to Flynn, being the gatekeeper of Pizzagate. They stop you from going any farther than them because they are your hero. They are on the front lines at the top of the list of knowing that information in the public's eye, because you have all of their little mockingbirds like Vandersteel, Santilli, and all these various characters in this Flynn network pointing to them as being the one to go to when it comes to these various topics, profiting off making fools of the people while offering false hope, solidifying his limited hangout PR operation/net campaign. Again, Pizzagate. Doesn't mean that all this stuff is false. Nathan was saying there, some of it is gross exaggerations, complete disinformation. Some of it is partial, and some of it is truths that they become the gatekeepers for, because you'll never hear a Liz Crokin bringing up Richard Branson and his island and his connection into these power players. So Flynn even calls for the one religion and prays the 7 rays to the globalist gods. Like I was saying, when it breaks it down, Flynn will act like he's a Christian, and he goes into a Christian church and says the 7 rays, whatever you really want to call that thing. It's not a prayer. It's a channeled message. We're going to get into that. But for heaven's sake, pen your eyes and ears to who they really give allegiance to. This video right here is what opened the show. This was the video that I played at the very intro. So let's get into some of these things that we've already seen on the screen at various times. And we're going to have it shown to you one more time in the next piece that I'm going to share on Nathan. But this shows McChrystal tied in with Flynn. And McChrystal even doing stuff that would harm Trump. I got the full article down below. And in this one, showing where he's connected to this William J. Donovan at the OSS Society. The Director of Defense Intelligence Agency, Flynn, offering a toast to the Commander-in-Chief. Who does he really give his allegiance to? That's what we're getting into. The Knights of Malta controlled the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, through their papal knight, William Donovan. As you can see on the screen there, the OSS, the United States Intelligence Services, during the World War II was a precursor to the CIA, which would later be established after the conclusion of World War II. You're going to see this, like I said, one more time coming up. I want to cover a little bit more of this. This is the long-established, well-documented, open secret of an agenda that Flynn truly serves. Ask him. Ask him about his mentors, his familial and business connections, and his end goals. He is loyal to the sovereign military order of Malta and various globalist orders' agendas. This is demonstrated by everything from his actions, his inactions, and even his literal prayers, 7 rays, re Malta, from Oliver North, Iran-Contra, and FEMA/COG formation to Bush. No reminder needed. Back to Bill Donovan, OSS to CIA, and Alan Dulles, MKUltra, and many more. Malta initiates furthering globalist agenda is clearly an ongoing problem for America and humanity, period. And there it is. Pay attention to where you see this popping up. Right here, the Trilateral Commission, United Nations, Knights of Malta flowchart. 1. The UN Secretary, Kofi Annan, has a special advisor, Mr. Maurice Strong. United Nations building in New York is on land donated by the Rockefeller family in 1944. Mr. Maurice Strong is a very close friend of David Rockefeller, originator of the Trilateral Commission going back to 1973. The Rockefeller family did create the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, in 1919 to 1921. 3. The Washington Post, September 9th, 2000. PA-16, it looks like. UN photograph included Count Carlos Marullo di Condogliani, Grand Chancellor of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, the most ancient religious order of chivalry in Christendom, composed of secular knights and associates. Most of the men named herein are members of the Knights of Malta, including Dr. Pat Carone, established during the First Crusade in 1070. Pope Pascal II approved a new institution and placed it under the protection of the Holy See in 1113. The most venerable order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem is a British order of chivalry under the crown, established in 1888. Some of this stuff, man, you got to do your research on, but we're pointing out enough stuff to get you started if you're looking in this area, tying Flynn to the Knights of Malta, the Trilateral Commission, the Military Order of Malta, and the Venerable Order of the Hospital of St. John did sign a concordant in 1963, and many members belong to both orders. So number 4, his photograph in Washington Post was part of closing ceremony to World Parliament, given birth by UN, One World Government, i.e. the New World Order. New World Order with ties to most ancient religious order of chivalry in Christendom. Secularism, worldly rather than spiritual. The view that the consideration of the present well-being of mankind should predominate over religious consideration in civil affairs and public education. See where Flynn's allegiance really is. Bottom line, business over religion. Private business is government. Government over the people. Now there's a video here that I don't want to go through the whole thing of, but I'll scroll through it. Just you'll have to pause the screen if you want to catch some of these names. You got the Bushes in here, the Rockefeller situation. I'll have links to this for anybody that is actually on X, but you should be able to catch most of it as I scroll through it. This just gives you more names that are connected to this thing. I think Giuliani was also in here. It's extensive. But once you start doing your research, I think more of it will start making sense. It's up to us. Look at that. Clarence Thomas, Opus Dei, U.S. Supreme Court, Scalia. This is how the secret societies rule the world. Then you find out who's actually in it for the people or who's just conducting business. And I'll leave this up on the screen so you can take a snapshot for yourself and look into more of these players. You'll find ones that kind of pop out like Frank Sinatra and stuff, which I've covered, connected to Bob Hope and some of the Bryce Taylor material and other various things that I've covered on this channel. The good old boys club, huh? Who's their allegiance really to? That's what it comes down to. And so this is going to be covered in this next segment, the 7 Rays Prayer. And Nathan's going to cover that as he goes through some things that I think are very important as we start to wrap up here. But one more segment from Nathan, but I wanted to point out here, Admiral General Flynn prays to the 7 Rays, to the globalist coward gods, raised by globalists, follows the footsteps of globalists, His pockets full, his promises empty. And I wanted to check this out real quick. In Blue Masonry and in the degree of the HRA, we call in the assistance of certain seventh ray angels to assist the officials in conducting the work of the lodge or chapter in this 18 degrees, and in other still higher degrees we do that also. But the type of angels who respond is different, for each degree has its own kind of Deva attendant. It'd be interesting to talk to Casey and Jesse and Annie and some of these people that came from Gene, because he was all about these Deva and the Deva kingdom. In these cases, however, the support of the angelic kingdom is much more fully extended. Not only have we the aid of the Devas in the performance of our ceremonies, but to each prince of heirdom at the time of his perfection, a special angel is attached to help him in his private and individual work for the cause. This will be more readily comprehensible if I mention first the characteristics of the other degrees. So getting into the masonry here, it looks like, and some of the doctrine that goes with these globalists. There you go. Now I'm going to go into the final share that I have on Nathan, and then we'll start to wrap this up. I know it's a lot of information. God bless you all for being here. Let's catch this next segment.
Well, let me ask you then about Flynn. And before I ask you the question, is he as bad as McChrystal, who you and I talked about in the last conversation as having whacked Rolling Stone reporter Michael Hastings? That's my view on that situation. But we have the video of Geraldo Rivera standing in Afghanistan, interviewing a sergeant major or somebody with some bit of power there in Afghanistan. And they were talking about how the U.S. soldiers need to protect the poppy fields for the opium production because that's their way of life in Afghanistan. I think the quote was loosely, "We're not here to change their way of life. We're just trying to root out terrorism." And so we also know that in Afghanistan, these grown men there like to take boys for sex. And it's common. And yes, the soldiers knew it. So is it possible that Michael Flynn was using, what'd you say, perfidy? Is that
Perfidy.
what? Perfidy? In service of the greater good, which is also, yes, evil and a war crime. How bad is General Flynn in your view?
Well, I would say first and foremost, it's really important for people to understand who is the one behind General Flynn. Who are the actors that are influencing, financing, and lifting somebody up? Because the rise to power in any general's life is very important, and the rise to the positions of the hierarchy of the United States military, let alone in clandestine operations teams, is critically important. And que bono is the question people should be asking, which is who benefits by that person being in the position of power that they have. So one of the individuals that we've got to address here is who is it that's honoring him and exalting him and lifting him up. And what we find with a lot of these clandestine operation teams, the founding fathers of them are rooted firmly out of the Vatican. They have fidelity, loyalty to the Pope, the Holy Roman Empire as a whole. And I'm not just saying that because it's some kind of non-substantiated thing, right? There is Johnny Cerrucci, as we've talked about before. We're going to read a little from his book. Then we're going to talk about the Knights of Malta and the Office of Strategic Services and the Office of Strategic Services Society, who honors Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, right? Really important. We're going to get there in a second, but just let me read something to you so you guys have an understanding. Illuminati Unmasked. This is written by Johnny Cerrucci. You guys can go to, I think, resistancerising.com and see any of his other works. This is one of his early on books. He did a phenomenal job as a historian, bringing forth the history of who, what, where, when, why, how, they, them, those who are actively involved in many of these different hidden hand agendas. And I would just encourage you, for any of you that are actually committed to trying to find out the truth, it's going to require some diligence on your part. But if you arm yourself with that knowledge, you'll be able to articulate it to others. But in order to better have an understanding of why these people are the way they are, like why Michael Flynn is giving a speech back in 2021 where he is reading verbatim a channeled message from the Archangel Michael that was channeled by a prophet of her own words and likings, channeled after 45 minutes of chanting mantras in 1984. And he's giving the exact same verbatim speech, calling upon the 7 rays of Mithraism, right? Where he's calling on all these people to bind themselves in mutual imprecations and an oath to serve the legions of a totally different light bearer. And it's fundamental that people not be taken captive by the devil because of being ignorant of his devices. Like, this is one of those fundamental warnings in the scriptures is do not be ignorant of the schemes of the devil, lest you be taken captive by him, right? This is why so many people are taken captive by him, because they follow after sheep. Really, they follow shepherds who are really wolves inwardly. But That woman who was actually prognosticating that channeling of that spirit was a practitioner of Helena Blavatsky and the 1,000 Points of Light and much of the Great White Brotherhood, you know, the mystics of the behind the scenes. So in here, we're going to turn to a page. This is on page 561. For those of you that are interested, we're going to just jump in here on what these individuals actually believe inherently and why they are the prophets on the front line trying to lead people towards a false light, you know, not that 1 John 1 light. There is no darkness in Yahuwah. But this is on Isis Unveiled. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky was a Russian mystic and occultist whose writings lined the shelves of the world's secret society lodges. Infighting amongst rival elites will often bring infighting amongst rival elites will often bring hidden truths to the surface. Even criticism of Christian leaders, groups, and behaviors by honest enemies will show sincere believers where to examine themselves. Although Blavatsky was an apologist for the darkest of pagan ritualism, she was unafraid to call out false Christians for what they were and also was surprisingly frank about rivals like the Jesuits. This quote, this is from her work now. The secret Christian societies all have an immediate connection. They are of Kabbalistic parentage and have once held to the secret wisdom religion, recognizing as the one supreme, the mystery God of the ineffable name, are more or less connected with magic, practically as well as theoretically. In term, them Christians is wholly unwarranted. They neither believe in Jesus as Christ, nor accept his atonement, nor adhere to his church, nor revere its holy scriptures. Neither do they worship Jehovah, God of the Jews, and Christians, a circumstance which, of course, proves that their founder, John the Baptist, did not worship him either. This is a quote from Blavatsky. While the uninitiated see the company of Loyola, this is a euphemism for the Jesuits, group of Catholic teachers and missionaries, Blavatsky accused them and their papal hierarchy of paganism, black magic, murder, and chaos. The origin of the Roman Catholic amulets and relics, this is her quote, blessed by the Pope, is the same as that of the Ephesian spell, or magical characters engraved either on a stone or drawn on a piece of parchment. The Jewish amulets with verses out of the law are called phylacteria, and the Mahatmian charms with the verses of the Quran. All these were used as protective magic spells and worn by the believers on their person. Epiphanius, the worthy ex-Marcosian, who speaks of these charms when used by the Manichaeans as amulets, that is to say, things worn around the neck, which are called paraptia, and incantations and such like trickery, cannot well throw a slur upon the trickery of the pagans and Gnostics without including the Roman, Catholic, and popish amulets. What she's bringing to the light here is how magical spells and incantations are used in this form of religion and in this form of religiosity. And now, for those of you who haven't seen Michael Flynn's prayer at this conference, a Christian conference, right, where he led the population into this. If it's all right, Sean, I'd like to just play. It's about a 2-minute prayer, which would help people to understand why he says, by his own words, he was reading from a card that was of Michael, the great archangel, that he had a card with that on it. That's what he was carrying on his person, carrying as a totem on his person that he read from. Okay. That's what by his own words, in his own defense, apologetically, he defended his position. He did not recant nor repent nor defend it from biblicity, what he actually said in that meeting. Okay. And I think it would just be very helpful for people to see this is the fruits of somebody's life who has a hidden hand agenda being manifested in their words.
Of those sevenfold rays and all your archangels, all of them.
And I am the instrument of those sevenfold rays and archangels, and I will not retreat. I will take my stand.
We will not retreat. We will stand our ground.
I will not fear to speak.
We will not fear to speak.
And I will be the instrument of God's will, whatever it is.
We will be the instrument of your will, whatever it is.
In the name of Archangel Michael and his legions, I am preborn, and I shall remain preborn.
In your name, and the name of your legions, We are freeborn, and we shall remain freeborn.
And I shall not be enslaved by any foe within or without.
And we shall not be enslaved by any foe, within or without. So help me God. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you very much.
So these are the sevenfold rays that Michael Flynn is just talking about, which emanate from the great source. Helena Blavatsky identifies the first seven rays she said they were the primeval celestial beings, variously called the primordial seven. Helena Blavatsky also said it is Satan who is the god of our planet and the only god. And this is her magazine, Lucifer. So when Michael Flynn says we are the instrument of your sevenfold rays, whose sevenfold rays? Satan or Lucifer.
What I'm trying to elucidate here is a vassal agent of the Pope has committed themselves to lie, cheat, and obfuscate their actual true who their loyalty is towards. They are not going to come out and show you what their actual reason, like the true heart of the man reason for why they're on the front line fighting the war and the tactics and the training, the protocols of what they're doing. They're not going to show that. That's the hidden hand of secret societies, non-elected rulers. That's the globalists that have a different agenda that's not coming from the people they're supposedly representing. That man does not represent accurately the Department of Defense, nor the United States military, nor does he adhere to the righteous path of biblical morality. And this is evidenced by the fruits of his lips, where he's being deceptive, cunning and deceptive. But let me show you, who is it that honors and exalts him? Okay, understand something. These are the individuals who exalt and honor Michael Flynn, General Michael Flynn. This is the OSS Society. The OSS, if those of you are not familiar with it, the Knights of Malta has organized and structured and placed and founded a lot of these third option covert intelligence agencies. The Office of Strategic Services was first founded by a man named William Donovan, a papal knight. Okay. The OSS in the United States Intelligence Service during World War II was later what became the foundational precursor to the Central Intelligence Agency, and later became established after there. This is Wild Bill Donovan here, and you can see the papal knight authority, all right?
Yes, and by the way, that same logo, that Knights of Malta logo, sitting on the building where, after Supreme Court Justice John Roberts cast the deciding vote to implement and pass Obamacare, he fled the country. He went on a little vacation, and he went directly to a place with that logo right on the outside. I'll slice the picture in right here.
Beautiful. But this is the hidden hand this is one. Please understand, there's many different deep state players who are navigating this disgusting minefield of psychological operations and actionable intelligence, direct actions against the United States population and the world as a whole. But the OSS Society honored Lieutenant General Michael Flynn as when he was the acting director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, when he offered a toast to the commander-in-chief. These are events that were documented and have long paper trails, and I encourage those of you who know how to investigate to go ahead and do that and to dig into why these people are being honored and revered in these societies. But that's because their fidelity and their loyalty has been as an effective change agent to control the narrative through psychological operations. This is the specialties of what covert military operations have in their playbook. And it's not to say that that's not wielded effectively in wartime scenarios and is not a critical tool that's needed to effectively defend national interests. However, we have a great variety of rogue agents acting on the behest of other nation states, many of which are from the Crown of Great Britain, who are trying to bring about like actual written testimony of Cecil Rhodes, the establishment of an Anglo-American English empire, the mixing back of America and England to come back into unity to control the world under its sovereign hand. Like the United States has 1 vote in the United Nations. Great Britain has over 40 at any given time. That nation has so much more power, and yet they used to be our adversaries for generations until in 1924, they took over much of our education system and literally changed the narrative in our historical books to make it out like we are warriors and friends and allies, that we need to get rid of all this contra narrative stuff about us being enemies. And this is where so much of it went over time. And you know, we have a duty to try to take back our understanding to be able to be intellectually equipped to defend our position, and why we need to utterly root out these false light bearers to the utmost ends of the earth.
And that's the goal of all of this, to root out the false light bearers to all the ends of the earth. Exposed. Stanley McChrystal, General Michael Flynn. Fully controlled opposition exposed by Nathan Reynolds and Gray Area Monarch. Thank you all for being here. This was another painfully beautiful production. There's a lot to go back through. You will know them by their fruits. God bless you, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.